Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. And this episode features singer and saxophonist Lora Logic, and it's a wild story. It actually begins with her mother's escape from her rural Finnish farm upbringing. It shaped how she raised Lora, but it was that farm where Lora felt most happy when she would go back and visit as a child. She talks about going through several instruments before she fell in love with the saxophone. And then there's her creepy sax teacher who made her feel really uncomfortable, but pushed her into busking and improvising. She joined X-Ray Spex, but was canned before the first album was even recorded. She released the first Essential Logic single, and that is quite a story in itself. After living the rock and roll lifestyle, having an epileptic fit, and having an out-of-body experience, she left music completely. Well, not exactly. She did perform with the band Juggernaut after becoming a Hare Krishna. Her return to music has been one of reformation, initially with X-Ray Spex, and then Essential Logic. She's released a box set of everything she's ever done. You can't get more comprehensive than that. She's also released a wonderful new Essential Logic album called Land of Kali. Follow her at Essential Logic Official and at Lora.Logic on Instagram. Check out the link tree for ways to pick up the box set and the new album, Land of Kali. Follow us at Performance ANX on social media. We accept coffee donations at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or buy merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Now prepare to be amazed by the wild story of Lora Logic on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Okay, I guess let's try this. Yeah, I don't know why this has to be such a big mountain, but okay. Hello, this is. Oh God, sorry. Is the button on? Oh, okay, right. Hello, this is Lora Logic here. You're listening to Performance Anxiety Podcast. Check out my new album, Land of Kali. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, I need to say the new Essential Logic album. Okay, I'll go again. Okay. Right. Hello, this is Lora Logic here. You're listening to Performance Anxiety Podcast. Check out the new Essential Logic album, Land of Kali, and my new 5-album, Logically Yours box set bundle, which also includes the new Prayer for Peace 7-inch single, available from cargorecords.co.uk. Do I need to do it again because of that? Okay, so I'll just go... available from cargorecords.co.uk, or you can order these wonderful items, the box set and the new Land of Kali album, from my link tree in bio. You can find this bio on Lora.Logic Instagram or Essential Lora Logic on Facebook. Hope you enjoy our wonderful conversation. Okay, I'm just checking I didn't leave anything out. This is Lora Logic here. Listen, check out new album, Land of Kali, box set bundle. Sure, going to be great fees. 7 single. Okay, if you think it's okay. I hope it does sound a bit tongue-in-cheek. That's better. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Just a chilled Sunday morning.
Same here. Sun isn't even up yet over here, so...
Of course, yeah.
All the kids are still asleep. Wife is still asleep, so it's a very quiet morning here as well. So.
Right. Yeah, I had a quick look at your Insta. You look like you've got some beautiful children there.
Oh, thank you so much. They're at the point now they're a handful. I mean, let's see, 18, 19, and 20. So they're more of a handful than when they were little, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah.
I think they fight more now than when they were toddlers. It's just amazing.
Oh, wow. I'm presuming they all have their own rooms each.
Yes, fortunately they do. But the youngest is a senior in high school, so she'll be heading to college next year. The other two have, my oldest started college and then took a year off. And then my son decided to take a year off before starting college. So they're all still in the house. So it's just, it's madness. Fortunately, they all have their own relationships and friends, and also they cross paths a lot, but it's not constant.
I can't imagine. I mean, for me, the worst thing's always been the messy principle, the messiness.
Oh, you are so right. It's insane.
Yeah.
I would almost show you some of the ridiculousness in this house. Although where I'm sitting right now, most of the messiness is mine because it's a table with all my podcasting equipment and 4 stacks of CDs that are probably 6 to 8 inches tall each.
But that's legit. Yeah. That's legit messiness.
That's true. That's my obsession.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for doing this. I went back and was listening to the music and researching for you, and man, what a story. So I wanted to thank right off the top Rob Marshall for getting me in touch with Kurt, who got me in touch with you. So I want to thank both of those gentlemen for whatever magic they were able to pull to get us together, because I'm excited to chat with you today.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know Rob Marshall, but Kurt is just a superhuman.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, if you should check out Rob's work. His first band the first band that I know of is Exit Calm. And if you like any of the early Verve stuff, like A Storm in Heaven, or like early 90s psychedelic stuff.
Right.
Exit Calm, right in that alley, but it's a few years later. And then his solo work, he did an album called Humanist, and it has a lot of guest stars on it. He wrote all the music, and then he's got like Mark Lanigan on there, John Robb.
Wow.
Who the heck else is it? Dave Gahan. So a ton of people on his solo album, and he's working on the second one. So he came on the podcast, and we just hit it off, and we've been chatting ever since. And
wow.
Yeah, it's been...
Is he the founder? He's the founder of Humanist then?
Yes.
I didn't realize. That's obviously the connection, yeah, because I know that he's friends with Kurt.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't realize Kurt had a connection to him. I never asked how they knew each other. I just know that Rob's like, hey, I know somebody I should introduce you to. And I was like, anybody you know, man. I'm up for anybody. And what's really funny is that it turns out, so Kurt was traveling with Karina around on the Pussifer tour.
Yeah.
And I was at the show in DC. So Kurt and I were in the same venue, and we didn't know each other yet.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that was funny. I told him, he's like, oh, I just got back from touring with Karina, and I said with Pussifer, and I was like, I was at the show in DC. So what I like to do is to find out a little bit about how you got to the point in your career where you're at right now. All right, so let's jump into this. The first thing I guess I would like to know is what got you excited about music in the first place? Was there a lot of it when you were growing up? Did your parents listen to a lot, or were you the black sheep who didn't have a whole lot of family into it and you just found it on your own?
Both really.
Oh, wow, okay.
I guess I was black sheep because my mum came from Finland, and she escaped Finland because it had very few possibilities. She came from a farm, no running water, no electricity, a really beautiful life, simple farm. But her parents preferred her to work on the land and have a education, and she didn't start school till relatively late in a nearby town. So you always want what you can't have. So she had academic intellectual pursuits were the goal of her life. So she figured she'd have to, broaden her horizons and leave Finland for that. So she became an air hostess later on to escape Finland and that life.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PERFORMANCEANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD.
So that's what she wanted for me when she was over here, and she'd met my father, who was in the army, and she wanted that for me because she hadn't had that.
That sounds like it could be a whole podcast on its own right there.
You're so enthusiastic.
Man.
Yeah. So, I had fantastic childhoods. I remember when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, the long summers spent on my grandma's farm there. And for me, it was paradise. Just wandering in the forest. In Finland, there's more lakes and forests than people. And it's normal for everyone to own a lake, a massive lake. And they have their beautiful log cabin at the side of the lake. And they, it was like, I remember even then, there were no baths. There was no bathrooms. The toilets were just in a wooden shack, and there was 3 or 4 of them in a row for all the farm workers and anyone else. And you just went in there, and whatever dropped went straight onto the fields.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So, but I thought that was so beautiful when I was growing up, and wandering in the forests, collecting mushrooms of every conceivable color you could imagine. And my grandma had a little book by the front door about the poisonous ones. So she said,
that's good.
Don't eat any until you bring them home. And then she would decide which ones were edible and which weren't. But, it was so magical as a child, just playing with neighboring village children and my cousin who lived with my grandma. And so
it sounds like straight out of Middle Earth.
Yeah, a bit like Tolkien. Yeah, and cows. And my grandfather was an alcoholic who would ride around on a horse-driven cart. And he was pretty crazy. He had a gun, and he often threatened my grandmother with it.
Whoa.
They weren't the happiest couple, but my grandma kept the show on the road. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, right, back to the music. So my mom, when she was raising us, she wanted the best academic education for us. She became a teacher, a language teacher. And there was really not much time to play for me because I was always having extra tutorials so I could be the best I could be in my class, and she wanted to train me up for a scholarship to the best all-girls school in the country, and of course I didn't want any of that because I was artistic by nature. And I just tried to escape from it as best I could. It was a bit hard when I was young. But the one good thing from my eyes was that she always wanted me to have music lessons. Okay. So at school, I'd get, I went through all the instruments, starting off with guitar, violin, piano. So boring the way that those things are taught to you.
That's
in
true.
School. So boring, just learning by heart 2 or 3 pieces on your own, having to learn to read music, very uninspiring. So I'd give them up very quickly. Okay. And then one day I got to be about 12 and so what would you like to learn next? I'd given up all the other instruments. And in the meantime, my father was always playing jazz saxophone in the house. Okay. Constantly. He wasn't particularly musical. He would have liked to have been, but he wasn't.
I know that feeling. That's a lot like me.
Yeah, and he was too busy with the worries of, bringing up a family.
Yeah.
And at the time, actually, I wasn't so interested in all this saxophone in the background, Charlie Parker and all these people.
That's a tough one for kids to get into, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a jazz saxophonist. Yeah. I was just discovering Mark Bolan and David Bowie, but I knew David Bowie played the sax, and so then when my mum asked me, I said, all right, I'd like to learn the saxophone. And I really didn't think they were going to buy me a saxophone, no way, because it was very expensive, and I just didn't think they'd go for it. But I came home one day and there was a saxophone there.
Wow.
A beautiful, beautiful tenor sax. Because my father loved the saxophone so much, he bought me one. I guess it sort of started from there. Yeah, I was also listening early on I used to like the rock and roll saxophone parts, like in Bill Haley and the Comets, and
all the early rock and roll stuff. Yeah,
the
saxophone played a huge part in that. Yeah,
I used to just love the simple, punchy riffs and.
Yeah, before there were a whole lot of guitar solos, sax was the big soloing instrument too. Yeah, it was. So that's it. I could spin it out more, but I think that you've got the picture. Right, yeah. So when did you start playing in bands outside of, your lessons and all? And how long did the lessons last? Because you said you gave up a lot of things, but you still obviously still playing saxophone. So did you take lessons for a long time, or did you just kind of start taking things your own direction?
Well, they didn't actually teach saxophone in the school that I was attending. So my mum, she found this really wacky Irish chap who had about 9 mistresses in North London. And he lived in a slum, and there was like kids on the stairs as you went up to his studio. And it was I was about, how old was I? 12, maybe 12, 13 at the time. And so he was really eccentric. He was quite a good teacher. I had a few lessons from him, but then he started making advances to me, and I was so young. I was very young, and then he started showing me photos of all of his mistresses, and I just had this awful sick feeling in my stomach. So I packed those lessons in.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I just thought I was going to be his next victim.
Oh, wow. He was looking for number 10.
He was so seedy, The place was filthy. It was a filthy house, and he was very seedy. But so I had a handful of lessons. He was a good teacher, and he got me kick-started playing. But he got me kick-started busking and improvising, which was nice.
Oh, wow.
And I just played, but mainly I just played along to records. Just whatever records I had at home. I'd play into a cupboard because it was so loud, so the neighbours wouldn't complain. I had a little clothes cupboard, and I just aimed the bell into a cupboard.
Oh, my gosh.
I had a small bedroom, but then it got really boring at a certain point, and I thought I'd like to play in a band. And I didn't play in any bands before X-Ray Spex. X-Ray Spex was my first band.
Wow. Oh, man. How did you find X-Ray Spex then?
Well, there was 3 main music papers at the time. There was Melody Maker, New Musical Express, and Sounds. And there was a few sporadic adverts in the back. I think Melody Maker had the most. And most of them were looking for musicians with experience, or there was this one advert which said young punks wanted, something like that. And as far as I remember, punks was spelt with an X. And I hadn't heard this word punk before, but I thought it sounded interesting, certainly more interesting than the other adverts. So it was probably, I think it was the first advert pretty much that I rang up. And then the manager of X-Ray Spex, Falcon Stewart, he answered the phone and he said, well, we're not really looking for a girl and we're not really looking for a saxophonist, but come down anyway.
You're not the one we want at all, but come on down.
But come down anyway, yeah. Yeah. So that was it. And then I just knocked on that door and that was the next chapter.
Man, that's a whole different time. So how old were you at this time then?
I was 15 when I went to that so-called audition, yeah.
So you started playing with X-Ray Spex. Did you guys play out a lot before the album came out, or were you just practicing together and working on songs?
Yeah, we started gigging quite soon. Maybe we had 4 or 5 rehearsals, maybe 6. Wow. And then we started playing. The Roxy was our first gig, the Roxy Club.
Oh, wow. Is that the one that became the album?
Yeah, that became the album.
Wow.
Yeah, live at the Roxy. And that's really where the punk movement, originated and began. It lived at the Roxy for a few months, and a lot of people say it died after that when the Roxy closed down. That early punk explosion and the real punk ethos died when the Roxy Club closed. A lot of people say that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was great. We were playing the same nights as bands like Generation X and the Slits, and so many of those, the Pistols, the Clash, they were all down there. Those early bands.
So what was that like as such a young kid being up there playing and these, like you're saying, the Slits, Generation X, these big, and I don't know if their impact had been felt at that point. I'm not sure exactly what it was like at that point. What were you feeling at that point? Were you kind of blown away by what was happening, or were you just taking it all in stride?
Yeah, I think everybody was just. It was quite surreal. Obviously, the whole thing, the people and the fans and the music. Everything about it was totally surreal. Everyone just went with the flow, I think. It was very exciting for young people to be involved in that. It was a pure, unadulterated rebellion. Yeah. In every sense of the word. And a great sense of freedom. People often ask about, well, how did it feel like to be a woman or a certain colour when you were making music in those days? But that was really all on the side because it was so revolutionary and so spontaneous. It was like everybody was the same. The audience would be on stage. Wow. For many of the gigs, the audience at the end, they just climb on stage. Oh. And I remember Polly and we had great fun. Some of them had to be escorted off the stage because otherwise the band would have been squeezed off stage. Oh, wow. But it was an event, it was an event, and everyone, there was that sense of unity and lack of discrimination. So it was pure in a sense. it was pure anarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you said,
I mean, it had its dark side as well.
Yeah.
It was dark, very heavy, dark drugs going around, and it had its dark side. But I think from an artistic point of view, it definitely opened up. It opened up the doors, no doubt.
Yeah, like you're saying, people weren't concerned about gender or race. It was more the music.
Yeah, it was the music and the personality. It was people. It really, it was not to do with the externals.
So how long did you last with X-Ray Spex? Because I think, if I remember from what I've read, they let you go before the first album was it even be recorded? Is that how it worked, or how it went?
Yeah, it was before. I was with X-Ray Spex from about September 76 until summer 77.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't want to repeat the same story if you've heard it before. Basically, I was given the boot. I was kicked out because I was a wicked witch.
Yeah. Always. So, but how did that impact you as a teenager at that point? Because when the album came out, they were still using your arrangements in the songs.
Yeah, it was upsetting. It's mainly hurtful, just on a personal level.
Yeah,
the whole way it happened. I just rang up and they said, "When's the next rehearsal?" And the man who said, "Oh, didn't you know we found a new saxophone player?" Well, how would I know? Yeah. We didn't have smartphones, and how on earth would I know? And it's just very cold way it was done, and then just using all the riffs that I'd arranged for the songs on the album, not even getting any kind of credit on the album, certainly no financial remuneration.
Right.
And so it was just the whole mood of it. I was gutted at the time. I just put my sax away and thought, that's it. I'm never making music again, and I'll go and do something else. I cried for a couple of days.
I can imagine, because I was thinking about this, and you've had, this career still, but I started thinking that I would have just put everything away and not, I don't know, studied history or something. I don't know. But now you did go and study photography though for a little while. Was that right after X-Ray Spex? Was that before X-Ray Spex and Essential Logic, or between the two, I should say? Yeah.
Well, I was still officially at schools. And I used to spend most of my time in the art room. So the one thing that vaguely interested me was going to art school and doing something there. And I had quite a good art portfolio. So somehow or another, I got into a reputed art school in London. And I thought I'd study photography. So that was the main thing I studied. But I was only there for a term because I got approached by Jeff Mann, who poked me into doing a single on my own.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, so that's how that worked out. And then, but you weren't really interested in doing the single at the time?
No. He was waiting outside the art school for me a few times, as I recall. And he said, "Come on, you were the best thing about X-Ray Spex. And I've got some fantastic studio time for you in a really posh studio. And all you got to do is turn up." And I told him I didn't have any songs. I'd never written a song in my life. I didn't have songs. I didn't have any musicians to play with. I really wasn't interested.
Right.
But he just pursued me. He said, come on, have you written a song yet? And he'd be there around. And then he said, just go home and write a song.
Just go home and write a song.
I did. I went home and I wrote a song, because by that time I was getting jaded with art school anyway. The only person I'd see during the day was a tutor who was having a nervous breakdown, and It was a crazy scene in the art school. The corridors were deserted, and any students that were supposed to be there were all snorting cocaine in the local Soho pub at lunchtime, and there was zero activity pretty much going on in the art school. So I thought, well, all right.
No, this
all right,
isn't it either,
not working
apparently.
out here. I'll try and write a song. And yeah, I just went home and I wrote Aerosol Burns in about 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I'm feeling so mixed up. I don't know what to think. I better hurry up and tidy up the kitchen. Yank. Got my razor blade deep from my active foundation. Out my body germs on the aerosol burns, aerosol burns.
Man, that's such a cool song too. 10 minutes, you just go home, write a song. See, to me, that just kind of blows me away because I'm almost 50 and I couldn't just go home and write a song. It's a whole talent that I don't have that just fascinates me.
Well, I think all you've got to do is click a button. It's like the power switch. And I've never really seen myself as a writer or a composer. It's just that I've just decided at certain times in my life, I want to create, I want to tap into that energy, and you switch the button on and you just make yourself open. And if you allow the space, into your life, I've always seen myself more of a channel, to be honest, than, or like, what's the word? It's just like, just to be open to receiving ideas. And then
Okay. I know what you're saying.
Giving yourself the space for that. And then when you get the ideas, just like putting them down. I mean, other people will probably echo the same idea I'm saying here, and putting them down, and then you just arrange them. And that might happen really quickly, or it might happen over a period of a few days or a few weeks or months or years. But for me, writing has always been that. It hasn't been, I'm going to sit down and write a song now.
Oh, okay.
It's more like, I'll just edit, I'll just collect ideas, and then I'll put them together under a certain subject, under a certain song title, which communicates an idea that I would like to share or express with other people.
At this time, you just kind of, well, I guess even now, are you walking around with a notepad or now your notes on your phone to just, when it hits you, you're able to write something down?
No, I've got the button switched off at the moment. Because to be honest, and that's what I did for so many years of my life. When I was raising children, I switched it off. I mean, sometimes, ideas obviously come flooding into your mind, and then you have to write them down because it's a shame to waste good inspiration.
True.
But generally, I find it all consuming. When the button goes on, I have to be able to deal with it, and I find it all consuming. So for many years in my life, I switched that button off.
So with the new single, you're the vocalist. Was singing something that you were doing at X-Ray Spex or before? When did that really start to start for you? I guess start to start. That's a terrible phrase.
That's very kind of you. Are you talking about Aerosol Burns?
Yeah, well, yeah, that, and just in general, when did you start singing? Was that something that you were doing early?
Well, it's very kind of you to call it singing.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I hear in the vocals there and in some of the early stuff, I actually hear some of that in some of my favorite singers like Linda Perry. And I wonder if maybe you were an influence on her, because I know she liked punk and stuff from that era. So I was just kind of wondering if, I guess I'd have to have her on the podcast to ask, but I can definitely hear the way you sang on those as an influence in some of my favorite singers later on.
Oh, okay. Do you know what? I haven't heard Linda Perry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Isn't that terrible? I haven't even heard her.
Well, if you remember from the early mid-90s, the band Four Non Blondes, that was her breakthrough, I believe. And then she put out 2 solo albums, and she does a lot of songwriting and producing. She writes tons of music for artists like Pink and some other big name people who I don't remember at the moment, but I actually love her voice and the way she approaches vocals. I can kind of hear, I guess the best way to say it, since you were before, I can hear you in your vocals in something like Aerosol Burns in some of the stuff that she's done.
Okay, I'm definitely going to listen to her and check her out. Yeah, I actually went through a whole period, 10, 15 years, I didn't listen to any popular music.
Okay.
I just switched off from it all. I was, I spent serious time in India and raising my kids and homeschooling, and I just switched off from it. I switched off from pop music.
Wow.
That doesn't sound too weird.
No, I mean, it's funny because it's not the first time I guess it's told me something like that. It's kind of funny how, your priorities change.
Yeah.
It's I can understand it. There's like when my kids were born, I didn't really listen to a whole lot of music. I couldn't afford to buy new music, first of all. So there wasn't that whole opportunity. I was living in a very remote, rural part of the country in southeast Alabama, so there weren't a whole ton of record stores anyway. And the internet with streaming wasn't really around. So it was, my opportunity to listen to new music was a bit limited anyway. And everything, 99% of the radio was country music, which I'm not into. So I totally understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation. Yeah. I was listening more to, Indian classical music and Indian classical instruments, sitars and mridanga drums and things like that. But yeah, also I don't know. Yeah, in those days, I don't think we didn't feel the need to be bombarding our ears constantly with something. Yeah. Whereas now it's just like, oh, I've got to check this out.
Yeah. So Essential Logic was that kind of short-lived too?
So from Aerosol Burns, when I recorded that, Jeff Mann, he was really happy with it. I didn't know what to think about it. I just didn't know what to think. It was just literally 3 other musicians that turned up in the studio. 2 had been fans of X-Ray Spex, who I'd never really met before.
Wow.
And the first drummer of X-Ray Spex, who got kicked out because his hair was too long. And they were just like the first people I could think of who might possibly want to turn up in the studio and just run through Aerosol Burns.
Wow.
With me, and it was literally first take. So
really?
Then Jeff Mann had this recording and he loved it. So he thought, well, he had his own record label, Cells Record. He thought, I need extended distribution for this. So he took it to Jeff Travis at Rough Trade Records.
Okay.
And Jeff Travis went bananas about it. So that relationship with Rough Trade was forged then, and I stayed with Rough Trade as Essential Logic and Lora Logic for the solo Pedigree Charm album until about 1982. So it was from 79 till 1982.
Okay, so 82 was interesting because you ended up being in a movie named after one of your songs and your main character in this movie. How did that whole thing happen? I think the movie and the song was Crystal Gazing.
Yeah. Well, the director of Crystal Gazing, her name has slipped my mind. Isn't that awful? I'm having a senior moment.
I can look it up real quick while we're chatting.
Yeah, I never forget her name, but I've forgotten it now.
It's the pressure of podcasting.
It's the pressure. Yeah, right. Absolutely. I'm so glad this isn't a video. Yeah, Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So, Sunday morning video. I don't think I could hack that.
Laura Mulvey.
That's it. Laura. I should remember because we're both Lauras.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, she had a son who was, must have been about 10. And they used to walk past the Rough Trade record shop. And there was Essential Logic had a single called Eugene.
Better house and better clothes and fabulous. You are Jane. You never made your puzzle you and fabulous. You are Jane. You never ever puzzle jewels and
with a picture of a gorilla on the front of it, which I'd taken. And he just loved this picture of the gorilla. And he said, "Mummy, I want that record. I love the cover." So she bought it for him and she liked the song. And then she checked out other Essential Logic music. Wow. And then she approached me. She said, "I'd love you to be involved with the soundtrack for the movie." And of course, I'd never made a movie before, nothing like that. Right. It was quite an experience, having a £300 haircut and having somebody spend 3 hours a day putting makeup on me, which is really challenging to sit there in a chair while they put makeup on you. So all that and having nice clothes bought for you and then making the film. Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Is that your only film appearance? Is that your one IMDb credit?
Yeah, I suppose cinematic film appearance. Yeah, I've been involved in a collaboration with Kavi Karanapura on 2 recent videos, but that's a different category, isn't it?
Yeah.
Song videos for the new album. But that was the first experience as well, which I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed doing that.
I haven't seen the movie, but I loved that song. So I can understand why she would have approached you, because that's a great song. The
Crystal Gazing one.
Yes.
Oh, I'm happy you like that. I'm glad you like that one.
I've really been having a lot of fun going back and listening to the earlier stuff. Some of it I wasn't familiar with. I was familiar with the band X-Ray Spex, generally, but I had never really dived in depth to it, and I'm really happy that I have, because it's really fun to listen to.
Are you referring to Beat Rhythm News as well, the first album?
Yes, yeah. The Live at the Roxy, and then the Essential Logic stuff too. It's really, everything's it's so energetic, and it's a lot of, like I said, it's just a lot of fun to listen to.
Oh, good.
So you've done, at this point, an Essential Logic album. The second one kind of became a solo album.
Charming down the street, charming when we meet new friends. Charm is everywhere, charm is all we need. Much charm we need, much charm we need, much charm.
And then you left music completely. What made you just back away?
Well, I never really set out just to make music for the sake of it.
Okay.
Just to be... While I was in Essential Logic, I also moonlighted, as someone once described, with Red Crayola, playing saxophone. And I play a bit of sax here and there with other bands. So I had those nice experiences of just playing free sax, spontaneous sax, or session saxophone parts. I'd played with Dennis Bobel and the Stranglers and the Raincoats.
And you sang with Boy George?
Yeah, I mean, that was just a fleeting... Yeah, I sang on some TV shows on Bow Down Mister when Boy George was airing that very nice single. I love that song, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a great song. Yeah, so that was that. So what I'm saying is I had the experience of playing in different kinds of scenarios and doing different things, but I never set out to make music just for the sake of being a brilliant sax player, because I knew I was never going to be Stan Getz or John Coltrane, and it didn't really interest me to be technically perfect or to be a technically perfect singer or to be a technically perfect saxophone player. I was always more interested in communicating thoughts and ideas to people and sharing those with an audience or with people. So that was my main motivation. And especially on this last album, Land of Cully, I didn't make it because... I didn't make it because at the age of 59, I wanted it to become all-consuming for the next 3 years. Right. I didn't make it for that reason. Right. I made it because I wanted to share some ideas with people. Yeah, so you're asking me why I packed it in 1982. Yeah. So I felt quite a bit down in myself. I was surrounded by, I didn't know anyone that didn't take drugs. And that sort of bugged me. And it bugged me that I was becoming a victim to that a bit too much as well. I lived in a squat for a few years and everyone was just out of it the whole time, including me, stoned the whole time. And became a bit paranoid. My health was suffering. I just felt like, I'd done it. I'd been there. I got the postcard. I'd done touring. I'd done gigs. I've made some albums. And I just thought I wanted a change in my personal lifestyle. Okay. And then my best friend at school, I saw her one day on Portobello Road when we were filming Crystal Gazing. And she was with the Hare Krishna people and she was jumping up and down and she'd been a hardcore amphetamine user. Wow. Last time I'd seen her on kind of like on death's door. Oh, and really in a bad state. And then I saw with Hare Krishna people jump, just looking like the bee's knees and she was dressed in a sari and she had Ganges clay on her forehead, and I thought, wow, she looks happy. But I thought, oh, she's been swallowed up by a cult. So I thought, I better go and visit her. And the temple was only in Soho Street, so it was near Notting Hill. Okay. So I got back in touch with her and I went to see her. And to be honest, the minute I walked through the door and I was exposed to the whole thing, the philosophy and the culture and the people. I mean, I just lost my heart to it. Wow. And I thought, I want to be like this. I want to be able to get through the day without drugs and feel some connection with the real me, and to meet real people who really aren't concerned who you are externally, and just to hear, to know. Because when I was younger, when I was about 11, I used to say this prayer every night before going to sleep. And my parents were pretty much atheistic. Okay. But I don't know why, I used to say this little prayer to God: oh God, if you really do exist, then please always guide me to do the right thing in life. Wow. And I don't know why I said that. I just don't know, but I did. So it was something and then through my teens, I kind of buried any kind of spirituality. But towards the end of the Essential Logic performing days, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to go on stage and perform and really give yourself to an audience and connect with an audience, without being inebriated. And I don't know, it just picked up again when I walked through that temple room. When I went into that temple room, I just thought, this is it.
How old were you at the time?
How old was I? I was, I must have been that first time about 20. Actually, wow. I was in the middle of recording Pedigree Charm also at that time.
Okay.
And I had to finish it. And another very significant thing that happened was we were in some Rasta's house in Brixton. Our recording studio was underground. We were sharing a recording space with this heat.
Okay. And
we just go to different Rasta's houses and have a smoke. And some very strong stuff was passed around, and my body began to shake really badly. And next thing I knew, I was propelling across the floor, and I'd collapsed in a heap. And
whoa!
I was having a serious epileptic fit, which I hadn't suffered from epilepsy before that.
Oh my God!
It was really heavy.
Wow!
And I thought that was it. I thought it was over. They carried me upstairs on this. It was in another squat. It was on a very basic wooden bed. And they just left me there. They left me up there.
Oh my gosh.
There was like two Rastas and someone else. Yeah, they just left me there. And I was shaking. And then what I did was I actually left my body. I rose above my body and I was looking down at this shaking body. But I'd already started visiting the Soho Street Temple about once a week and immersing myself in ideas of karma and reincarnation. Mm-hmm. And when this happened to me, it totally figured that, no, I'm not the body, because I've just risen above my body and I'm looking down.
Right.
And I had strong faith in Krishna, because I thought, if there is a God, he's going to be really beautiful, and why not? God can play the flute and God's special.
Yeah,
so
right.
I was really, really very much convinced that if there was a God, his name was Krishna. So I started praying to Krishna.
Okay.
And I said, please put me back in my body. And if you do, I'll clean my act up.
Wow.
So so that happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was amazing. It was. And that really changed my life, that one experience. You know, other people have similar histories, experiences of how life changes for them, or life changed for them after they have an out-of-body experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. At this point, so that album comes out and you're spending more time in the temples. Is there a time where you just decide to just stop music and dedicate yourself to the religious side of you?
Yeah, well, I finished the album, Pedigree Charm album, and then I decided after that out-of-body experience that I wanted to move in with the Krishna people, the community, because not far from the squat where I lived, George Harrison, there's a temple there, it's still there, it's called Bhaktisiddhanta Manor, right. And it had been donated by George Harrison of the Beatles, and it was a little out of London, it was, a little rural, and you could just go and stay there and spend time there. So that's what I did, and I just ended up staying there. And at Soho Street, I lived there for 2 or 3 months, and another rural temple retreat in Worcestershire. So I spent 2.5, 3 years just living in temple, and that's when Polly moved in as well.
Oh, okay, from X-Ray Spex.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, strangely enough.
That's incredible. So were you not playing at all at this point, or were you just playing to keep your chops up, or did you just stop?
Well, I was quite busy just doing other things like getting up early and chanting and singing and just doing simple things like maybe helping out with the cows and
Okay.
Cleaning and cooking, just enjoying being a simple, normal human being in a community. And most people didn't even know that I had been, or that I was somebody called Lora Logic. And it was just really nice to switch off from all of that. But then Polly, unbeknown to me, Polly had also started visiting Soho Street Temple, and I hadn't spoken to her since she'd kicked me out of the band.
Wow.
So to find out that she was also visiting was a bit of a mental nightmare.
I can imagine. Oh, wow.
She was the last person that I wanted to see, yet alone speak to, yet alone have a bit of peace and love with.
Oh, yeah, that must have been quite a shock.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was because I'd already moved in, and I just thought, oh no, there's not going to be any escape. There's going to be nowhere to hide.
Oh, but it ended up working out. I mean, X-Ray Spex reformed in 95.
Yeah, that was quite a bit later. I mean, as it turned out, obviously she had changed.
Yeah.
She had mellowed out a lot in many ways, and she'd moved on from that space. Although, unfortunately, she was always plagued with her bipolar condition, so it was hard to maintain a steady relationship with her. We had some kind of relationship from the time that she moved into the temple and the time that we spent living there together. And also we formed the band together while living in the temple briefly, which was called Juggernaut. And we did one gig at Glastonbury.
That's amazing.
One summer.
One gig and it's Glastonbury.
Obviously, it wasn't on the main stage.
Still.
There are other stages. But we just sang new songs that we'd written while living in the temple. And one of those songs was Prayer for Peace, which is the last single that has been released, that I released just recently on my own record label, just in November, the last single. We wrote that song together at that time. Rather, she wrote it. She wrote the lyrics and I helped her arrange it. But I did, Central Logic has done a new take on that, which is a new single with a fabulous video, I have to say.
Yes.
Directed by Kavi Koronapura. So we did do some music while living together in the temple.
One of the things I've noticed in looking at the Logically Yours box set, there's music in there from 91 to 98, and X-Ray Spex reforms right in the middle of that, which it's an interesting lineup because not only you, but also Crispin Mills from Kula Shaker. Yeah,
I mean, it was so magical. The musicians that played on that album, Conscious Consumer, Polly just rang me up one day and she said she was living outside then. She had a small space, a little flat. She was living outside the temple and she said, would you like to come and play sax on a new X-Ray Spex album, just sort of out of the blue? And she said, just come and stay with me for a week and we'll do the album. And I'd never heard any of the songs before. So I had a young child at the time, but I just thought, I'd love to, who could resist a new X-Ray Spex album? Yeah. And, but it was so wonderful. Crispian, his guitar is so brilliant on that album. It's just perfect for those songs. Yeah. And it was the first time I actually met Crispian when he was just a young boy
Oh, really?
Because I used to have a friendship with Hayley Mills. She used to visit the Krishna temple quite often. Hayley Mills, because his mum, that's the Hayley Mills, the famous actress.
Right, yeah.
And I met her at the Hare Krishna temple because she used to visit George Harrison's Manor Temple. And I met her there. And then she invited us to her house. And I just remember crisping when he was a little boy. And then
amazing.
suddenly he was there and we were making an X-Ray Spex album together. So that was really nice.
That's so hilarious. He shows back up and he's this incredible guitarist. It's just, he's so talented.
Yeah, he is.
So
he is.
There's that box set that came out, that Logically Yours box set, and it's got music from 91 to 98. So were you just occasionally recording stuff? Because there's tracks on there that are amazing. Like, I absolutely love Under the Great City.
I could see time on my own. Hang the phone here in my home. Just me under the great city. You won't find me out, not even if you shout.
Do you know what? I think that's in my top 3 favourite songs.
Oh, awesome.
Out of the whole lot. It's amazing you should like that. I love it too. I really love it.
I think, especially on that disc of songs, that is my favourite track on that whole thing. I absolutely love that song. So
that's on the No More Fiction. Yeah, the No More Fiction album. I think that's the 4th one in the box set. So yeah, that was...
Were you just sporadically writing and recording at this time, or were you trying to get some projects going?
Yeah, it was... well, what happened after I moved out of the temple, I spent 3.5 years living in temples and moved out of the community, and somehow or another I got this 4-track cassette recorder, a little Tascam cassette recorder, and I thought, well, I want to carry on now. I was feeling the bug, and I just thought I want to make some music, and I got this, and I thought, let me try doing it all by myself without the aid of a safety net. So I got this little 4-track cassette recorder and a keyboard and a Shure microphone. And I think I got an Atari computer. I had to do that to connect everything together.
Oh, man.
And I just taught myself how to make a song. And I just, I just faked it. I just faked it, and I just put these ideas down. And I never imagined with Marika, with Essential Logic, those few songs that I did in the beginning, then I never imagined that they would actually they would manifest on a piece of vinyl. Right. I just made them, and then I did something else. I had, it's like I had a child, and then I did a few more songs.
Right.
And when I felt the bug again, somehow the universe,
wrote a song.
They just, whenever I felt the bug, there was some amazing musician to bug out with.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Over the past couple of years, you've had you've had the Logically Yours box set. You've also had the Kill Rock Stars release for Fanfare in the Garden. That's a bunch of recent retrospectives. So you've been pretty busy over the past couple of years. Did you have to do a lot of the legwork to get everything together for these compilations, or were the labels, did they have it and just want your some new tracks? How did these come together? And I'm always fascinated to find out where all these songs are living when when the artist isn't exactly active.
Yeah, well, luckily most of the songs were living with Kill Rock Stars because before I went to India in about 2000, Kill Rock Stars approached me and basically said my music button was off. It was severely off at that time. And they approached me. I'd even sold my saxophone at that point.
Oh, wow.
For a ticket to India because I wanted to go and spend time in India. And I had 2 kids. I liked the idea of bringing them up over there rather than here. I really wanted them to have a different early experience in their lives. So I sold my saxophone to help pay for air tickets to India. And just before I went, Kill Rock Stars approached me and said, we'd like to do a compilation with everything you've got. And I think if I'd thought about it too much at the time, I might have said, no, I'm not going to give you everything I've got. But I really didn't care at the time. So I said, yes, you can have everything I've got. And I remember it's quite complicated. Yeah, I had to go and get stuff sorted and digitalized. And
it sounds to me like you were almost kind of going back to when you're a kid, going back to simplifying your life, when you're going back to your grandparents on the farm. It was a very simple way of living. And, going to India, it sounded like you were trying to simplify your life. And then, just take everything just because I don't need it right now.
Yeah, it wasn't important to me. It just wasn't important to me at the time. Since then, music has become, like now, is very important to me. We go through different chapters and we go through different priorities in our lives. But things just change. But the way that the box set came about was, so Kill Rock Stars had everything and they released it, and then I decided to start recording the new album about 3.5, 4 years ago, Land of Cully. And somehow or another, at that time, I met Celeste Bell, who was Polystyrene's daughter. And I hadn't been in... The way that happened was because she was making the Polystyrene I'm a Cliché biography film about her mother's life. And she contacted me for an interview. And that was a catalyst. That was really a catalyst for me getting back into the Lora Logic side of me, the creative, artistic side of me. Just doing that one interview for the film was incredibly therapeutic. And it made me realize my kids were pretty much grown up by then, and it made me realize I want to do this again. I really want to be creative again and make music again. So Celeste was really the catalyst for that. And then she started to give me some advice, and because it was a whole new world coming back into the music industry. In 2019, I didn't even know what Instagram was. I barely knew what Facebook was. And it was scary. I mean, I had enough going on in my life.
Right.
So, and then she said, well, you will need to open up a Facebook account. You will need to go on Instagram. And then my daughter, who was, she must have been about 19, she said, I'm going to do this for you. And she just opened up an Instagram account for me.
Oh, wow.
And that was that. And I went on Instagram and not knowing anything about it. And then there was all these people that replied to me in the first post and said, oh, so happy you're back. And, I realized that people were still listening to the music, to Essential Logic music. And it was a revelation. It was just a revelation that people still had the records and they were still listening to it. So that was quite a good head start, really. I wasn't starting from scratch.
Yeah, you had a almost like a built-in audience ready for whatever you're about to do.
And the most shocking thing was that there was a younger generation that had been influenced and that were listening to it, because I just didn't realize. I didn't know. I wasn't in touch with all of that. And to come back and find that, young people knew the names of songs that I'd recorded 40 years earlier, it still shocks me.
Well, I've really enjoyed the new album, The Land of Kali. one of the things I've noticed between that and the songs in the box set from the 91 to 98 is your singing style has changed a lot. Has your writing, the style, the process, subject matter, how is that? It's kind of an open-ended, broad question, but has it changed a lot since the essentially Logic time in the early 80s to the new album? Kind of a broad question,
the process definitely, because the Land of Cully was largely a lockdown album. Most of it was just created by yours truly alone in her bedroom.
Wow.
Learning how to use GarageBand, just like I learned how to use the 4-track Tascam tape recorder. And I didn't even have a computer at the beginning of it all, but this Mac just came into the house. Actually, it was a birthday present for someone else, and I kind of kidnapped it.
Oh, that's great.
And then, and then I made friends with Apple support and learned how to use GarageBand. So, it just happened very kind of, the way it always did happen, just fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Providence. Things just...
Providence, yeah. But the Land of Cully, I think I enjoyed making this album, even though it was kind of like the biggest tribulation. It was like the agony and the ecstasy of making it. Oh, wow. Because there were so many hurdles and there were so many challenges, and not knowing what was going to happen next with it, who was even going to put it out, how I was going to get from A to Z with it over 3.5 years. But I just felt like, there's some angels overseeing it, and that everything happened when it was supposed to happen with it. And meeting Youth Martin at the very beginning of it all, connecting with him, he was like a lighthouse, a shining beacon on the horizon. I knew at the end of the day, I could take it all to Youth, and Youth would make it sparkle.
So did you know Youth from earlier, or how did you start working with him? Because I love a lot of the work he's done. Like, I know he did. I mentioned the Verve earlier when we were talking. I know he worked on the Urban Hymns album, and that was really my introduction to him as a producer. And I've kind of tried to keep an eye on some of the things that he's been working on over the years, and I love his work. So when I found out that he was working with you, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. I still can't believe that that his guitar parts are on there, and his samples and his production. I still can't believe it. Well, what happened with that was I heard through the grapevine that he loved the Hare Krishna mantra, and he had a great interest in all things esoteric. He'd spent time recording Tibetan monks in India, and he'd spent a lot of time in Goa. So I had a feeling we'd connect on that platform, because 2 of the songs on the album have mantra. I just thought, well, I'm just going to message him. And I messaged him one day. He was on tour in America, and I said, got some new stuff. We never actually met at the time, even though we're the same age. We're both the same age, and we both grew up in the same scene. But as far as I remember, we never actually met. Anyway, he messaged back and he said, yeah, it'd be great. I'd love to hear your new ideas.
Wow.
And I just went round to his house one morning.
I'm just going to use house.
With some really rough ideas. And we just sat there for 6 hours, and
wow.
it was fabulous. And I couldn't believe it when I walked into his house. He just had all these old sort of antique paintings of Krishna and Radha, and this incredible altar with Buddha and Jesus and prophets and, mantra signs dangling in every room. And I just thought, well, this is perfect. This is a match made in heaven.
It sounds like it. I mean, the music, the whole album is wonderful. And I love how it starts with Prayer for Peace. So I thought that was, and now knowing a little bit more behind it, I think that there's no other way you could have opened that album. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Also, he had produced Polly's last album, Generation Indigo.
Okay.
So there was a strong connection, with Polly there too.
There's so many different styles in this album. I really had a great time listening to it. I love the beautiful Prayer for Peace. It's just a magical opening for the album. But I love the heavier riff on Sirius. That is, I really like that too.
Yeah, Youth heavied that up a bit with some. It was really funny. He sent me a message one morning, and he just said he put some really mean guitars in the middle of the night on Sirius.
Mean, I like that.
Yeah, some really mean guitars. So I was very much looking forward to, because that needed to be a bit mean, that song.
Well, it's called Sirius. I mean,
yeah, well, that song is about the time I left my body when I had that epileptic fit. So the lyrics are about that experience.
Wow.
So I was happy to have some mean guitars on there.
The title track is great, Land of Kali, but I think my favorite is Alien Boys.
Oh.
I like that. And the video is good too. Enjoyed watching it, but I think that's my favorite track on the album.
Oh, good. Well, that's very healthy.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned that Prayer for Peace started a long time ago, but were most of the songs new, or had you been working on them for a couple of years? I know you said, there's a 3-year period of working on the album and in the middle of a pandemic and all this other insanity, but was anything older besides Prayer for Peace? Was anything older than 2019?
Well, the lyrics, the words had been, some of those, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd been written maybe over a period of 10 years. Some of the the ideas, yeah, definitely. Some of those ideas were from a back burner notebook, and I collaborated with some of the song themes with my husband Yadu over the years, and they were the themes that I really wanted to elaborate on. But the music was that was all fresh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the music was totally fresh. It was really just some of the concepts and the lyrical themes.
To me, that's amazing, because I've heard that before with other artists, and maybe a guitar riff or lyrics, and they're like, oh yeah, I pulled this one out from, I recorded something from 15 years ago, and I'm like, what are you, how? It's just amazing to me that somebody would record that, put it away for 15 years, and then somehow find it 15 years later or whatever it is. That kind of blows my mind a bit too, that you've got these ideas, you've packed them away, and then somehow you're able to find them. Because I know if I put something away, it's going to be hard for me to find. I have a hard time finding photos that I'm looking for on my phone that I took a month ago. So,
I think that's much more challenging.
So,
yeah, and there's one song actually which I co-wrote fresh with my daughter on, called Skyrocket, which is going to be, I think that's going to be the new single that we release from the album, and there's another amazing new video for that.
Tumbling down the helter-skelter, I'm going down. I don't care where it will take me, I don't care for that now. Heading for the joyride I heard so much about. Feeling kind of fizzy on the merry-go-round.
Damn, it won't happen to me. I will live eternally. I will never cease to be. Damn, it won't happen to me. I live eternally.
But that
Wait.
song, yeah, that was written with my daughter.
oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah, called Skyrocket. And that probably out of all the songs, that was the most spontaneous of all. We just sat down and she just found one chorus that I had in one of my notebooks, and she liked the chorus, and she said, Mum, let's write a song together about this. So we sat down together and brainstormed that. That was done in 20 minutes, half an hour. So that's probably the fastest song, apart from Aerosol Burns. That's probably the fastest song that I've ever been involved with.
Wow. Well, when everything starts to click, it works and it comes together quickly.
Yeah.
So what's in store for 2023 for you? I know you said you've got possibly another single coming out. Are you do you do any live shows? Are you planning on playing this live at all? Or are you working on any new music?
Yeah, we well, last year I spent 4 or 5 months putting together a new band with the idea of live appearances, and we just did one concert on December the 1st.
Okay.
Just a small one. It was just a sort of launch event, a box set launch appearance, and that went really well. It was a challenge, really a challenge, as you can imagine, to be playing live after so many years.
Yeah.
But it showed me that people still appreciate what Essential Logic has to offer. And yeah, I'd like to carry on with that in 2023. Be nice to play a few festivals come summer.
Go back to Glastonbury.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind.
Well, I've really loved the album. How can people pick up the album? How can they hear it themselves? And what's the best way to follow you to get some information, new singles? If you are out and about playing, how can they find you?
Well, yeah, if they go to Facebook, Lora Essential Logic Facebook, or Instagram, everything's always going to pop up on there. And there's a link tree, Lora Logic Instagram. The link tree has everything, access to the YouTube videos and the box set album, which is available from Cargo Records.
Okay.
Cargo Records. There's also a special purple violet vinyl edition on Rough Trade, limited edition, you can get from Rough Trade Records. If you just go to my Insta, or Facebook, there's details about all of that.
And that's just at Lora Logic on Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you got that in front of you? The Lora Logic Insta?
I can pull it up. I've got my phone right here. Let me get to the right.
I think it's just Lora Logic. There's an Essential Logic Official as well, actually. Essential Logic Official and my personal Lora Logic.
Okay, it's Lora.Logic.
Correct, thank you. It's Sunday morning.
I know. I always forget dots in those things. Dots and underscores.
Me too.
Oh, look, this has been wonderful. It's just an incredible story, and I'm so glad to have met you and spoken with you. And really glad I've been able to dive into the music. It's just been a great journey.
I'm so happy that you like, especially the new album.
Oh, I love it.
It's just like, it's just worth it all. Worth it all.
Oh, I'm so happy. And I'm so hope you get some live shows. If you ever come to the U.S. on the East Coast, I'll be there. I'd love to hear this live. That would be just amazing.
Yeah. Okay. I look forward to that.
Yeah. So is there anything that I missed that you wanted to discuss or anything that you wanted to get out that I may have missed while we were chatting?
I think it would be nice just to mention Kurt Pagan Davis, in as much as he was really, because, I'd recorded this Land of Kali album, but I didn't know. Celeste had kind of mumbled, "Oh, it would be nice to do a box set and release everything you've done." But I didn't know who was going to put it out there. And, I'd approached a few people and a few companies, but then Celeste introduced, I'm not quite sure how you'd put this, into the interview, but basically she'd introduced me to, she said, "I've got the man for you, Kurt Pagan Davis."
Okay.
And then he introduced me to Cargo Records, and since that meeting, he just, he pulled everything together. He came up with the idea of releasing everything in one go, like everything I'd ever recorded, and the new album at the same time. So it was a lot to take on for him.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And for Cargo, and for me, just to have, after not doing anything for 40 years, no releases, certainly no vinyl releases, to have everything come out last November at the same time, it was quite a big thing. Everything coming at once, just the release, and then the videos, and then all the interviews, and just having been out of action for so long, to have everything explode at once. So I guess that was just one point that I'd quite like to express. But that Kurt Pagan Davis was so responsible, and I feel so indebted to him for having engineered these releases.
That had to be overwhelming for you. I mean, everything coming out all at once after such a gap, that I can't even imagine having to piece all that together. So amazing job. And I'm so grateful to Kurt for connecting us. So he's been so kind to me and getting everything set. But thank you. I really do appreciate all the time you've spent and just being so open and willing to chat with me. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. To be honest, I haven't done, like I said, because I was out of action for so many years, I haven't done that many podcasts.
Yeah.
I've got about 50 on a back burner in a list waiting to be done. But when Kurt sent me your one, and then I listened, I just thought, I'd really like to do this one as a priority.
Oh, gosh, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. That means so much. You have no idea.
No, really, I just you're so enthusiastic, and you're very genuine, lovely person.
Oh, thank you.
I just really leapt. I really leapt at the opportunity. So thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine.
Oh, that means the world to me.
In the land of Kali, there is no such thing as lucky. In the hands of Kali, I lost my man.